Hey, welcome to Agri-Talk. Okay, I'm on this.
You're on the middle.
No, we're on this.
Yeah, this one over here. Sorry.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to Agri-Talk. We're going to talk about water and where it should and shouldn't be, right?
Yes, and where you shouldn't be planting your house, or maybe you do, and if finding insurance to do it. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about floodplains. And who do we have with us today?
Today we have Raina Fulks, right? She's the local Floodplain Administrator, I'll say. Is that correct? And we're going to talk about insurance, map coverages, where you can go to find out if you live in a floodplain, things like that.
What exactly does she do being a floodplain person?
Well, that's a good question. I think we should introduce her and let's start to have a conversation. So.
Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, well, I'm Raina Fulks. I'm glad to be here. I've been with the Gallia County Soil and Water Office for 3 years. Before that, I worked at Meigs County.
Well, we have a little mic problem here.
Let's fix that.
There, how about that?
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. As I was saying, I've been with the Gallia County Soil and Water Office for 3 years, working in the floodplain department there. My job covers the unincorporated areas of the county for floodplain regulation. So some of the day-to-day things that I do there, I do floodplain checks for people to see if the site is located in a map floodplain area. I'm the map repository. The office is for the entire county. So if anybody would like a map or has questions, whether it's in a village, a city, or an unincorporated area, I can help them with that too. So
where is your office?
It's in the Spring Valley area. It's right next to the Fairgrounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right next to the extension office or
it is,
that area?
Yeah,
okay.
Same building.
I wasn't sure if you were with the engineer's office or not.
No, they're down the road.
Right.
Down the road.
So what's your most common thing that you get?
Probably the most common thing is when people are buying property and they're planning on developing it and they want to see if it's in the floodplain or not. And definitely any kind of construction project, and we always encourage people to come and check before you do it to make sure it's not in the floodplain. Some things that people don't realize are regulated are some things considered development that you may not think they are. If you even put a fence in the floodplain, unfortunately, you're supposed to apply for a permit through my office, which is free of charge, which is always nice.
A wire fence?
Pretty much anything. If you have to ask, you should probably check.
I wouldn't realize that a fence would be something that you would have to have a permit for.
And the concern there, I guess, in FEMA's standpoint is if it was to get to that large 100-year flood level and the waters reach that, debris could back up in the fence and potentially cause a problem.
Cause a problem down the road.
Yes.
Okay. So is that the same thing as such a, like a building that isn't really attached to the ground that would, I assume, could float away, is that the same thing?
Like a manufactured home?
Yeah, something, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just, I just thinking like a storage building or something.
So even storage buildings.
Okay.
Yes, they need permits.
They still need a permit.
There's also building requirements. If you're in the floodplain and you would like to do a garage, a storage building, a shed, whatever you want to call it, most of the time there's requirements on flood openings. They kind of look like air vents in the bottom of the house, but they're made to allow water in and out.
To go in and out.
Yeah.
Okay.
That way, if water was to get in it, the walls wouldn't collapse.
I see.
Never realized that one.
Yeah.
I live on a hill, so.
Well, yeah.
If I flood,
I'm close to a river, but not. I'm above quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if you got to apply for the permit, and you say it's free, though, right?
Yes.
And for the people that would just like we had a conversation a little bit ago about buying a house.
Yeah.
And if you don't go through a bank or something, you just buy it kind of straight out. You may not know that you actually live in a floodplain.
Right.
And so how would one find out that you actually lived in a floodplain? Do you go around year to, from once a year you go around and go, you live in a floodplain, you live in a floodplain, or
I suppose
how is that?
I suppose that could change depending on the development of highways and culverts and those kind of things, right?
The floodplain maps are updated every few years, so it could change. Your flood zone could change, or whether or not you're even in the floodplain could change. So definitely come to my office and check. Soil and Water Office, we can check any place in the county, like I said, whether it's in a village or not. And yeah, I'm happy to do that. I love it when people ask before they start a project, because I want to prevent problems before a project starts. But it is tricky. Sometimes it's sad, but we have to go to people that have already started a project and say, I'm really sorry, you're in the floodplain, and this is what you should do to comply with regulations. Because it's no fun when you need to start assessing fines or anything crazy like that. So we always try to work with people before it gets to that point, if we can.
Do you ever run across to where you do have to do a fine or something?
We have some cases in process.
In process, really?
Yes. It's sad, but it happens, and it's there's really no timeline where FEMA's kind of going to forget about something. Some places have been built a long time ago, and FEMA comes down along with the Department of Natural Resources, the state people. They come down and they do site visits, and they kind of check on development, make sure everything is good, everything is compliant. So sometimes when that happens, problems can be found, but we do everything we can to work with landowners to make things compliant with regulations.
What kind of floodplains are there? There's like...
there's several zones, they call them. There's 3 in our county. The highest risk zone is called the floodway.
Floodway.
Yes. So if you live, for example, on the Ohio River, Raccoon Creek, Chickamauga Creek, they would be mapped at least partially in the floodway. That means when you get to that large 100-year flood event, the water's going to be really deep, it's going to be fast flowing, it's the most dangerous. So because of that, it's the highest regulated. There's also the middle zone, kind of where a lot of people end up being mapped. It's known as Zone AE. And that means that there's elevations that have been established for that area. And when I say that, I mean base flood elevation. So that way someone can say, okay, if I build above this elevation, I should, in theory, we can't control Mother Nature,
right, yeah,
but in theory, be safer from the flood, and my house shouldn't flood. So that's the AE zone. It's kind of the mid-risk zone, I guess you would say. And then there's also another zone, just A, which is just approximate. That's one that I caution people, it could be changed in the future when we have more mapping done by FEMA. If they come out and study it and establish those elevations, then future development would be a little bit more regulated than what it is now. So I know it gets all kind of
that almost kind of makes me think of, wonder if I live in a flood zone. I don't know.
You can always check.
Yeah, I guess, I live
I'm
close
afraid
to...
if I get flooded, everybody else is going to be flooded.
Well, yeah, we've had floods in the past, and the towns would be flooded before I would, but I live really close to a stream.
Right.
So a river, I guess.
Also, on the insurance side, just because you don't live in a floodplain, doesn't mean you shouldn't have flood insurance.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true.
Because runoff can get in your house.
That's very true.
Other things can get in your house. Various reasons. I don't know if a water heater breaks or other things like that. Is another reason why you might want to have flood insurance.
So how do I get flood insurance? Do I have to come to you get some paper and then go to an insurance company, or how do you do any kind of a
They probably figure your rate on
where you're located on which of those levels?
I can assist some of the companies. There are a couple different people that sell flood insurance in the county, so I can basically give you a list of where you would go to actually purchase it. Some of the companies have an independent agent that go out and they assess the flood zone and they make their own determination, but a lot of them do come to our office and have me fill out, sign off on something, or at least print a map showing that, hey, you are in this zone.
They are in the zone.
But a lot of times the flood insurance agents have to require you to get an elevation certificate now, and that will show the exact elevation compared to the flood levels that we spoke about where your house is. there's been some legislation changes with that. More people are unfortunately required to get that now with flood insurance. It can be a little pricey. You have to work with a licensed surveyor to get that done. But sometimes it can be a good thing. Sometimes your house is higher up than you thought. So
now, if you do live in a floodplain and you have had your house flood, there's probably a restriction whether you could build there again.
There are restrictions on the amount of repairs that a person in the floodplain can make. Say, for example, if you have a house that was built, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, that might not be up to our current standards. It depends on, you know, what happened with the situation. If you're not up to standards, then this definitely applies to that particular house. We probably heard people say grandfathered into programs. So if you have a house that was grandfathered in, for example, something happens, you want to remodel, maybe you just want to add a room on, you know, something like that. You can spend up to 50% of the value of the home before it is considered a substantial improvement in FEMA's eyes. Once it gets to that 50% or above, then you have to bring the entire building up to code, which could mean elevating. It could be very expensive.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So we definitely caution anyone that's doing any remodeling to check with us.
50%.
Yes, keep below that 50% mark. And that is the lifetime of the building. It follows the building, not the landowner, so it can add up.
Now, I've seen some things raised on stilts or other things above, I don't know, 20 feet sometimes maybe.
Right.
This looks kind of odd, but I guess they get them by, right?
Yeah, it's you can do that, and you can also use that.
Does that then take your house out of the floodplain?
Well, if you choose to, you can apply to FEMA for what's called a letter of map change or amendment. And if they approve it, if you maybe you even brought in fill to elevate your house. If they approve it, they can actually change the floodplain map in the future and show that you're out. You'd have a letter or a certification from FEMA that would say you're no longer considered mapped in the floodplain. So that's really beneficial, especially with flood insurance. That would give you a much better rate. It's tricky sometimes whether or not you can actually get that issued, but it's definitely worth a try if you're in that situation. And that's something I definitely help people with. There's a paper or an online application.
Interesting. Go ahead.
No.
You had a question? Okay.
I was checking the time.
Oh, you're checking the time. All right, good. With the 3 areas, then does that mean that there's other restrictions with the 3 areas, and your building, like you said? I still kind of come back to that question: does people go out and check? Like the auditor will go out and go, oh, you know, your taxes are going up. You live in a flood zone now. Does somebody still come out? Does somebody come out and travel and find out, hey, your building, you need to check this? Sometimes they do.
Sometimes that does happen. And I do, you know, if I'm out on another site, for example, I'll just kind of keep my eye out.
You keep your eye out on that
development, that kind of thing. I mean, that is part of my job. One thing that is great is people in the communities just really keep an eye on everything and just talk to people, talk to their neighbors. You know, you may want to know about this and forward them to me, or hopefully get them around to me. So
yeah, I didn't know by the 3 zones. Maybe you really watch the one that is the most dangerous, but then you really, you know, okay, they'll tell us there, but we kind of patrol this one area, or in a sense, I guess.
Yeah, and the auditor's office also, they forward some forms to us, build notices and things like that.
Okay.
They'll forward through my office.
That's
so
okay.
As long as it was properly filed with them, it can get to me to be checked.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so it gets other ways as well.
Yeah.
Good. What else about that? I got law changes with flood insurance. Now, what's law changes? Does that come up periodically, or?
Well, you may have heard in the news in the last few years that the Congress has made some changes to the National Flood Insurance Program. And in doing that, basically the problem they've been trying to address is that program is horribly in debt. It's billions of dollars in debt. Originally, the National Flood Insurance Program was made to be self-sustaining. The policy premiums would pay for, you know, the payouts to help people rebuild. And, you know, nature happens, disasters happen, so they have a huge debt because of
Probably
that.
after Katrina and such things.
Right, anything like that, it really builds up, of course. So
I guess the thing on the Atlantic coast too, Atlantic City, didn't it flood?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, anything like that. So because of that, they've made some changes to try and keep the program alive, basically. Unfortunately, that means landowners do have to pay a little more now for flood insurance. Some of them, it's a little bit more, but it's not that bad. The people that I've heard the worst cases from are people that have multiple homes. One thing that the law changes have started is if you do have a second home, or if you have a business, something like that that's insured, there's an extra surcharge now to help fill in the blanks there, and it can be several hundreds of dollars. So it's you know, it's not something that's fun, but it's unfortunately, if the country really wants to have flood insurance available that's federally backed, I mean, there's kind of no other way that they've found to get that program back on its legs. So, you know, we definitely, you know, we try to guide people through those changes. There's fact sheets available to kind of answer a few questions people might have about why is my policy so expensive now. But really, I just tell people to go and talk to your flood insurance agent, because they're a great resource. Obviously, it's their job.
Now, didn't we have some pictures or something that we were going to show?
Yeah, I think it was of the
A couple of
fairground.
Of the fairground. Okay, we'll see if we can get those up. Maybe, I'm not sure. We're working on it. Maybe a little bit of technical difficulty here in the background. About the pictures you're talking about and the fairground. So the fairground flooded, or is? I'm not from this area, so I don't know what.
There we go. That's the fairground.
Here's the.
This is taken from like the 4th or 5th floor of the hospital.
Yeah, this was in 2014. This was a flash flood event that we had. It was a very severe one. When this happens on Chickamauga Creek, it's just so sudden. It's just really hard to get people out of the way. So that's the reason I brought a couple pictures of the fairgrounds, is because they are considering trying to get funding to move the buildings out of the floodplain, which would be great. There's my office in the back there. We were kind of stranded for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's just people don't realize when they're driving past there, or when they're attending the fair, you know, unless they're, you know, someone who's been to the fair for years and years. So it's crazy the stuff people have to think about when they're developing in the floodplain and all that. There's been a lot of times when people have been afraid they would have to move, you know, all the fair projects and animals and everything out because of the flooding, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
So is there a difference in the floodplain as far as what you said, flash flooding versus like the big river or creek floods?
Yeah, I guess if, you know, when you're on the river, for example, you can see it coming a little more as far as from a landowner's perspective. Definitely when you're on these little tributaries or there's the smaller creeks, you know, the flash flooding comes and it's just right off of those hillsides just all at once, and it's really dangerous because it takes people by surprise a lot. So
I was going to say, it seems like they may be in different places than the regular floods. If you're just looking at pure elevation, there's the runoff.
And and it changes all the time. The more development that happens, unfortunately, the more problems you're going to see. We've
like
had a
paved lots.
Exactly. Anywhere where there's not grass to soak up that water, it's just, it makes it a little bit,
right on down.
A little bit worse. And
so we have another picture up here.
Yeah. You can see this flooding is not a new issue. It's been around for a long time.
No, that floods like at least once a year, I think.
Oh, at least.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, the fairgrounds does.
It does.
And it gets over the road right here.
Yeah.
Now, does it flood there on a summer basis, winter basis? When Is there kind of a time? Spring is usually spring rains?
Well, yeah, most of the time.
Hopefully not during the fair, which is in August.
Yeah. Right. That's what everyone hopes.
Yeah. And so is there, you know, when you see that these are regular occurrences, does the government, FEMA, whoever, do they try to come in and go, well, how can we correct that? I mean, is that something that...
Put in some culverts to relief it?
Yeah. I mean, who makes that call? Is it FEMA? Is it the county? Or is it a combination of both? Or
yeah, well, it is. It is a partnership. One thing, you know, when we talk about the different flood zones, that particular property is partially mapped in what's called the floodway. It also has the zone AE that we talked about. And because of the floodway zone, one of the things that is required with the regulations is to have a hydrologic study performed before you do anything. So the old buildings that would be there now are kind of, you know, grandfathered in like we said before, but if they wanted to do some kind of stream project to try and get the flooding a little bit more under control, they would have to get with the engineer architect to do a hydrologic study that would show that what they do isn't going to harm someone downstream.
Make it worse.
Make it, yes, the flood elevations, it wouldn't rise.
Yeah.
So it's a long process, but it can be done, but unfortunately it takes a lot of money.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, is the only thing you do is floods, or I've seen, I don't know, protected areas because of runoff, or not necessarily runoff, but can't think of the name of it right now, but watershed.
A watershed, okay.
You know, we get our water from the runoff. It goes in the creeks and reservoirs and things. So like putting a plant or some sort of chemical in a certain place, is there some sort of regulations about that you deal with?
Not really about fertilizer placement, or is that kind of what you're thinking? No, we don't really deal with that. We do work, you know, in a lot of different kind of, I guess you would say, watershed stewardship programs, you know, all the different things. We do work with the Raccoon Creek Watershed Project occasionally. They're a great group that does a lot specifically for Raccoon Creek. And they, you know, we do help educate landowners along with them, you know, in all the different watersheds in the county. I actually used to work for Leading Creek Watershed, which is just over the hill there in Meigs County. And
so what's the difference between watershed and flood zone, and what's...
Okay, well, yeah, every stream has a floodplain, and not all of them are regulated into flood zones, but the ones that FEMA has studied are. And then a watershed it's everything that collects the water that goes to that stream. So even if you're up on the hill, you may still be in the watershed of the stream. So the things that you do in your yard or, you know, your backyard are going to make an impact eventually on that water system.
To come back to that, you know, where at the beginning we talked about a fence and such. Well, what about planting trees and stuff? Do you still have to report that, hey, I'm going to be planting a row of trees along here, along my edge of the yard? So it's not a fence, but it's permanent. That could obstruct that waterway again. Yeah.
Well,
so is that something that I would have to report to?
No, you
no,
don't.
Not
landscaping,
that. Not that.
No,
okay.
not that kind of thing. I mean, that's, you know, there's trees are going to pop up there anyway, whether we're there or not.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of why they.
Yeah, it was just kind of obvious.
Yeah, well, fences are
maybe.
Yeah. you kind of make a fence out of a row of hedges or something. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so
but it's man-made development is the big thing.
Well, I didn't know. I could see that being maybe a problem. You know, especially if I want to plant small fruit trees or something. You know, and they're already established. You know, they might be 8 or 10 feet tall. I mean, what's the difference in that and a fence row that I'm going to be building? So it could collect the same debris, I guess, if you plant them in a row.
Sound like a lawyer.
Well, you know, I'm also, you know, hey, it's going to cost somewhere along the line. You never know. So, and then I wanted to go back to the grandfather clause. What is there a year that, you know, anything that's been 1950 or below is grandfathered? What is that year? Well, I guess we never really established
Who's
that.
grandpa?
Yeah, who's the grandpa? Yeah.
It's 1989.
1989.
The county, the unincorporated areas of the county joined the National Flood Insurance Program in 1989. So anything that is built before then is grandfathered in. So.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say a lot
fairly
older.
recent.
Yeah, that's a lot younger than I thought.
Yeah.
I guess. So.
You're your grandpa a couple times over, huh?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, no problem. So.
Now, do you know if old Route 35 was supposed to be out of the floodplain? Because in like '94, I think it flooded.
Ooh.
You know what I'm talking about? The one that runs from here to Gallipolis.
Right. That and that could have been flash flooding too. I don't know.
From what I believe, that was all supposed to be built above the floodplain, so you could always travel that. And hundreds of yards of it was underwater.
Wow.
Well, and you know, it could be the.
Yeah, that was a spring thaw and rain and everything else.
It could be a little bit. And I don't know, I'm just speculating, but it could be a little bit of a disconnect sometimes between the county agencies, state agencies, federal agencies. They're all, some of them are exempt to floodplain permitting.
Really?
Yes, now they are supposed to, in theory, follow the floodplain regulations, but some of them are exempt from actually getting a permit from my office. It's just the way the government works, I suppose.
Well, that sounds interesting.
How about roads and bridges?
Roads are, the county engineer, you know, they work great with me and they get permits for everything. But if it's a state road, you know, like I said, they technically are supposed to follow. But they're the state.
They kind of get grandfathered in whether they want to or not.
Exactly. And they do great. I'm not making it out like they don't. They do great to work with us. It's just a technicality sometimes.
Yeah, sure. Well, hey, I think we're just about out of time. We're getting pretty close anyway. So, is there any last minute things about floodplains you want to tell anybody? There's a website.
Contact information.
Yeah.
We
got it up on the screen there.
If you ever have any questions, you know, about anything floodplain related, feel free to email or call. We also have a website, galliaswcd.com. So check it out, and also, like I said, the FEMA website. You know, if you could just go on and Google for your question related to FEMA, and they have a lot of great fact sheets on there. So
now, can I get the floodplain maps online too? Or do I have to come to your office?
They do have, we have a GIS mapping program that has a real nice kind of color photo, and it's real easy to read. FEMA does have some maps online. If you're tech savvy and can go for it, they're there. Sometimes they're a little difficult for people to get to, but I'm always happy to help.
Great.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, and I hope this was enlightening for everyone. So join us next month on Agri-Talk, and thanks for watching.